Is it difficult for you to look at a game like that following a game like West Virginia when you talk about game 1 to game 2 improvement and really get a gauge as to how much better a team was able to get?
Yes. In a word, yes. It's very difficult. I will say a couple of things about that, though. I thought you had two different opponents who tried to defend Penn State in very different ways. And it was interesting to see how Drew Aller seemed utterly prepared for both of those styles. That was one thing that I think kind of impressed me. And then I think one thing that nags at you a little bit is defending the run. And again, with a huge grain of salt, a boulder of salt, because of the quality of the opponent. But, those are two things that I think you maybe can take away from this, even if you're grading on a curve.
If Yarns had not broken off the 66-yard run, and he did, but if he had not broken off that run, would you have had a different thought process about defending the run?
Well, yeah, probably, but here's the thing. I thought West Virginia ran it pretty effectively. I thought more effectively than the numbers indicated, than the stats indicated, and maybe got away from it a little prematurely. So that was a concern. But this is what I go back to with defending the run. You're right. It's just one play, but it was one play in which they made a huge mistake in terms of everybody being in their gap.
Right.
So I remember last year when Michigan did to Penn State what they did on the ground, and after the game, James Franklin, that was when he did his famous "Everybody wants to be Aaron Donald" speech. We got to get bigger and stronger. But then Manny Diaz came back later and said, you look at the film and you saw a lot of guys who were not in their gaps and were trying to do too much and not trusting the guy next to them necessarily to just do their assignment. And then Penn State defended the run much better the rest of the year. And if you remember, the very next week was Minnesota, which had an All-American caliber running back and a very good offensive line, and that problem wasn't there. So maybe this is a learning experience.
Right. No. Well, I think you make great points. What have you liked about this team through two games, where you see where the progress is obvious and the potential is there, and could the potential be even greater in these areas you're about to talk about?
Yeah, I think so. A couple of things. The offensive line doesn't seem like it's 100% healthy, but the depth that is such a critical issue seems to have come to the fore a little bit because of that. Guys like a Nick Dawkins or people like that have been very good. I think that's encouraging, because the one thing about the offensive line that you always have to remember, this sounds sort of goofily simple, but you have to have 5 of them. You have to have 5 of them on the field all the time. So it's the rules of football. So having that depth, I think, impresses me. I don't think the wide receiver group is going to be the problem that a lot of people, or not the problem, but a potential issue, let's say, that a lot of people thought going in. I was sort of bullish on that group. I thought that was enough. There were enough there that it would sort itself out, and it looks like that could be the case. And then the other thing is their secondary is just outstanding. It's got to be one of the best in the country. And I'll grant you that certainly West Virginia was not prepared to really test them, but I don't think there are a whole lot of people on their schedule who are prepared to really test that bunch.
Any read on Illinois to this point? I don't know if you watched Friday's game at Kansas or not, so I'll just open the question and see where you want to go with it.
I did watch a fair amount of that game. I think it's clear that, at least at the moment, they're not what they were defensively last year. or even maybe the year before. Defensively, they did lose some bodies, and they have a couple of outstanding guys. They have a couple of NFL players on that defense, but the group had significant losses, and they haven't found answers to that, at least yet. Kansas really ran up and down the field against them. They do have a quarterback who can make some plays with his arm and some plays with his legs. I have to see if I can find the young man's name. I can't think of his name, but so I think that will be an interesting sort of some of the things that Luke Altmaier. Some of the things that West Virginia was able to do in the run game, maybe Illinois will be able to do too. But I don't think Illinois is as good as they were last year, and they were tough last year. They were really tough out. I mean, 8 wins, and they really they would say should have beat Michigan and gave good people good games. And right now they're not there yet.
Yeah, and part of that too was they had a first-round pick at corner who ended up going to Seattle. I mean, no question. What a player he was, man! If you watch the NFL draft, that when they showed highlights, that guy's film jumped at your eyeballs as well as anybody in the whole draft. But anyway, I digress. There's on this show we lead the league and digress. We just talk. It's conversation. Yeah. So I want to get to Katron Allen for a moment. Nicholas Singleton will get the credit for 3 touchdowns. We all know the quality of running back he is. Drew was 22 at 26. What did you think of Katron Allen's performance, going over 100 yards?
Well, he did what he very consistently does. I thought there was the only difference from what he does every single week is I thought there was a little bit of a conscious effort to feature him. Yeah. And he started, which he doesn't normally do. James talked him up a lot during the week. It's funny. Through the first 3 or 4 weeks of last season, Nick Singleton, because he is so fast and so strong and so explosive. I mean, at one point, 3 or 4 weeks into the season, I think he was leading the country in yards per carry, and I'm not sure he had broken a tackle yet.
Right.
And Katron Allen is just quietly turning a 3-yard run into a 6-yard run over and over and over. And I thought as the season went on, Nick got a lot better at learning the Katron Allen thing. How to make people miss, how to stop and go, how to be patient, how to get that extra yard after contact or yards after contact. Nick became more like Katron, but Katron, I mean, he's just money in the bank. He's just kept doing his thing. The only difference I see this year from last year is I think he really got serious about conditioning. So now he's a stronger, more solid, probably a little bit more explosive athlete, but the same player. I mean, this is, Penn State, I don't want to say they hit the lottery because they recruited very wisely with these 2 kids, but man, they are really getting their return on the investment here. Those guys are just outstanding football players.
I mean, that's why I always laugh at his nickname, which is from being a baby. It's Fat Man. Yeah. All right. Well, he's 222 pounds and his body fat's like 4 to 8%. I mean, come on.
I know. I do this thing called the Market Report for Monday's paper. Just always kind of funny stuff, Yeah. And I referred to him in the Market Report as the erstwhile fat man who is no longer a fat man.
But he likes being called that.
Yeah, I know. Maybe it's not erstwhile. Maybe I should have taken erstwhile. I just like that word.
And erstwhile is a brilliant word to use, by the way. I mean, it comes off as intelligent. It comes off as forward-thinking. How about that?
And it really just means former.
Of course.
But I like to throw it in there.
Yeah, exactly. I know people will look at this as the start of conference play. I got that. But the reality is, isn't it, Mike, that it doesn't matter whether it's conference play or non-conference play. They're playing for bigger things and not just the conference.
Yeah, that's right. You play 12 games. it's 52 weeks a year of being a Penn State football player, but you play 12 games. You have to show up for all 12, and you have to, and it really is about, I think, more than any year since James has been here, it's about something beyond the conference. That's exactly right, and certainly that's what the fan base is saying, and that was one of my big takeaways from Saturday was the fan base. The announced crowd, 108,000, which I think was pretty accurate for an FCS opponent with that weather forecast. I mean, it's almost that they've always had a gargantuan fan base, but I think we're almost at another level right now.
I mean, they're remarkable. I mean, they are remarkable. Yeah. Now I want to get. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, I think that was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, of course you expected a good crowd, you always do, but that good in that context, pretty impressive.
Very impressive. You have the opportunity to go down, and when they bring out select players, but they bring out a dozen players, if I recall correctly, down there.
Roughly, yeah.
So you've had back-to-back weeks where it's not like you've talked to 24 players, but you've talked to a few. Right? What is your thought process on the maturity of the players that you are talking to on this football team to get a read in that regard?
It's better than ever. On the other hand, sometimes I wish they were a little less mature and they'd say a little bit crazier stuff. If that makes any sense. I mean, they've certainly been trained in how to deal with the media, but a really good example of this is Drew Aller, because as soon as he comes in the room, and he comes in the room early, he's one of the first guys in, and they put him up front where James Franklin sits, and he immediately gets inundated with cameras and microphones and people sticking stuff in his face, sticking their recording equipment in his face immediately. And man, is he good at it? And so I mean, and right away he is there. All the aspects of the job of being a quarterback, he seems really advanced at. And it's funny, I drive, my carpool buddy is Dave Jones of Penn Live and the Harrisburg Patriot, and we got in the car to drive home, and that's one of the first things Dave said. He said, "Man, is Aller good? Is he smooth?" And he checks all the boxes. And for quarterbacks, there's a lot of boxes. There's a lot of boxes even beyond what just goes on in the field. But he's got it. Whatever it is, he's got it.
Showed a few things on Saturday, including. He ended up running for 27 yards in the game. Quarterback sneak off the T formation. How important was it for them to put a couple of things on tape for people to see?
Yeah, I think that's true. And he looks to me, he looks leaner after this winter in the conditioning program. He looks leaner and a little more athletic, a little more explosive, and that is, I think maybe only 2 or 3 planned runs in the first 2 games, but why would you do a lot of that given the game situations? And the other piece of that is what they showed future opponents with Bo Pribula, and what he can do in the running game. And again, James is increasingly coaching through the media. I think he's getting more and more comfortable doing that, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, he threw out the possibility that, hey, we might come up with a package for Drew, so you got to prepare for that. You don't know what you're going to get from us. So, yeah, I thought that was significant.
Well, everything you do with us is always significant, and we appreciate it very much, my friend. Thanks so much, Mike. Look forward to seeing you as the week goes.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Steve.
It is the best half an hour of the week. And it's the first post-week NFL half an hour. As always, it's great to be here.
Well, let's start with, obviously, the big news of the week. The Aaron Rodgers injury 4 plays in to his tenure with the New York Jets. Just what ran through your mind as you watched it all play out last night? Because when he went down and I saw the replay, the first thing I thought was that might be an Achilles.
You want me to be honest? My initial reaction is my night just got a lot longer. and it certainly did. I thought the exact same thing. I'm not a doctor, and I didn't diagnose or anything like that, but that wasn't an extreme hit. It's not like he was rolled over. You didn't get a sense that it was broken, and his reaction was that of the veteran that knows exactly what it is, And he was there. He stood up for a second. I remember it distinctly. He shook his head. Then it was as if they told him to get down because they'll come and look at him, and we didn't see him again. So it was. I felt very telling. If you've watched a lot of football games, you get kind of a sense of what certain injuries or general concept injuries will look like. Like, this is going to be something to do with the knee. This is a hamstring. With that, it kind of just seemed like Achilles. From what I've heard of it, it's typically not going to be as painful as like a broken ankle will be, but you're not going to be able to move either. And not much you can do with that, and it really kind of seemed like Rodgers knew. He kind of flipped the ball at the defender, too. It was almost like, at first I was like, he was that competitive sort of, antagonist that's in him. I kind of felt like he's upset that he just got sacked. He threw the ball, but you watch the replay knowing that he was hurt. It's like he knew it right when he went down. I've been racking my brain on this since last night. I don't think there is a comparison in sports to that. The level of hype, everything that came with it, and the brevity of his time there. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel it was the right time to do it, but I was, kind of messing around on Pro Football Reference, adding up the players in Jets history who now mirror Aaron Rodgers' stats, among the likes of Keyshawn Johnson, Wayne Corbett, players who are 0 for 1 with a 39.6 passer rating, but none of them got sacked. So it really just kind of mind-blowing how quickly it all can end. And that's what happened, unfortunately, to a team that, good things don't happen to very often. They've got an uphill climb, and they are, in many cases, after a wild ride, exactly where they finished last year. They're in the same spot they were in. It's a good defensive team, and they certainly played like that last night. To some degree, you really hope that they're able to kind of overcome that, but it's hard to envision that working out over another 16 games.
So now let's bring this now to a league issue, because with Rodgers in play, the league puts together its TV schedule for the year. I believe the Jets were within one of the league maximum of nationally televised games that you are allowed. So what does this do from a league perspective? Because now the drawing card is not there.
As far as we know, there won't. Logically, there's nothing that's going to overcome the loss of Aaron Rodgers. And the story going into all of those games will be, what would this have been like with Aaron Rodgers? That's unfortunate in a way, because you can't really, obviously you can't predict this. It's hard to say that this is a terrible game to watch now that Rodgers isn't a part of it, because to be honest with you, one of the most entertaining football games of the week, and probably will remain that way for the rest of the season, was what we watched last night between the Jets and the Bills. Was it great football? No, probably not, but it was dramatic. It was entertaining. There were lots of ups and downs for both teams, probably more on the mistake end of things than you would typically say for like a great game, but it was entertaining. And I think the Jets bring a lot of that. There's still a lot of star power in that team. The defense is fun to watch if you're into defensive football. There's a lot to watch with them.
Yep.
I'm not sure how much of that you can really get past if you don't have the quarterback, and I am sure they will be flexed out of every opportunity that they have to have that done to them. But it's competitive football. That's really what you hope for more than anything. They have a lot of explosive potential on defense, and we saw that last night. And Buffalo didn't play particularly well, to put it mildly. And the Jets did the best that they can do. You really hope Zach Wilson can kind of turn it around. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but they can be a real tough team to play if he's playing even, replacement level football where he is now.
So now let's turn to the the movie The Fugitive, where Harrison Ford is on the bus and the train is coming at them. So let's get to the Steelers-49ers game. You just feel like you can't turn away. Okay, T.J. Watt aside, it was terrific. Now there's no Hayward. Now there's no Johnson. What do you think of this team?
I thought, you could make the same movie parallel to like Groundhog Day. To be honest with you, our conversations for the last 3 years now, after week one, it's exactly the same. We see the value of T.J. Watt, who had yet another brilliant week one performance, and this team's offense is so convoluted and the operation is so sketchy, you don't know where it's going to go now. This is just the year. The real difference is this is the year we shouldn't have this same conversation. But here we are. It's amazing to me on the third play of a game, and yes, it is week one. There are things to iron out, but veteran tight end Pat Freiermuth on the strong side, the left side of the offensive formation, on the third snap of the game, clearly did not know the snap count.
Yep.
Didn't seem to understand his assignment, and circled around twice while 4 49ers players hit the running back in the backfield that all basically came in untouched. What happened? Why? I understand that there are things that happen, but it's the third play of the game. You guys have had 2 weeks. You should have 10, 15 plays scripted that you can run well. And if you don't believe me, watch San Francisco's first 15 plays. Tell me if they made a mistake in any of them.
Sure.
Pittsburgh consistently is like this. Now, I understand the stat of Matt Canada. His offenses haven't gone over 400 yards in his entire tenure as offensive coordinator. I hear the fans complaining about where the ball is going in their passing game as if that's the only thing that matters. The problem with the Steelers' offense is they have not exploited the continuity that they have. They've had 2 training camps now with Kenny Pickett. He is, without question, their guy. They knew that going in. Kenny Pickett has started now 13 games, and 3 of them, off the top of my head, were so poor, they quickly come to mind when I bring up worst starts that he's made. And Sunday was one of them. Yeah. So his last start is one of his worst. It's not a good sign. Your receivers are still operating in their own space. They're not working in concert with anybody else. That's a schematic issue. I think their offense would have been vastly improved if Pickett threw the ball accurately. He struggled mightily with that, almost to a cringeworthy level in the NFL. You can't miss as badly as he did, as often as he did.
Yeah.
But at least the defense couldn't stop water from running uphill either. Now, this is the point where we should fairly point out San Francisco's a really good team.
Sure.
If you want to watch offensive operation, look at the way they executed. It was crisp, clean. They knew exactly what they were doing. And contrary to common opinion in Pittsburgh, they're not doing anything complicated. It isn't overly creative. They just do everything the right way all the time. That's hard to stop. Pittsburgh has a knack right now of being an offense that's best skill is keeping both teams in the game. When they're down, when the pressure is against them, or they're in 2-minute drill, 4-minute drill, they seem to be much more successful in an effort to kind of come back into the game. But they're not going to ever be able to pull away from an opponent either. They have to have the things on, kind of the same level. And it's I'm not, call for somebody's job. I'm not getting into that, but there comes a point where I really can't help but wonder what exactly is going on inside these meetings. What are they practicing? Because they're not crisp. They're not sharp. They don't seem to be working in concert with one another. So what's the plan? What are you trying to get them to do that they can't do? I've often said this wasn't a team blessed with an overabundance of talent on the offensive side of the ball the last couple of years, but they're not being put into a position to succeed either. And however they want to answer that or address to it, the natives are restless. I know that.
Yeah.
They're playing a defense that, in my opinion, after watching them play, the Browns are on the same level as the 49ers are defensively. They're really, really good. This is going to be a challenge, and not going to look real good in Pittsburgh if they start off after all the hype that they had from the draft into training camp into the preseason. They're starting off 0-2 with 2 games in which they scored 7 points or less. That very well might happen, just all things considered from what I've seen. And now there's a huge improvement from week 1 to week 2. I don't want to put that in stone yet, but Cleveland is at mid-season defensively. They look really good. So it's trouble in Pittsburgh. This is a real important week.
Well, part of the job is seeing what your personnel is capable of and then fitting your concepts around their capabilities. So what are some of the capabilities that maybe some of these players do have that doesn't seem like it's being fit into?
Well, the passing accuracy of Kenny Pickett has never been a real hindrance. And I'm not trying to pick on Pickett as if that's everything, but to defend Matt Canada from a results perspective, you really can't do a whole lot when your quarterback can't hit the broadside of a barn. Okay, there's not much you can do when he can't put the ball on the money ever. People are getting after Deontay Johnson for slipping, or at least using that as an excuse for that interception. He didn't slip until he had to come back across his body and attempt to go over the defender to get the ball. That's when he slipped. That pass was nowhere close to where Deontay Johnson was. Contrary to that, it was exactly where the defensive back was. Considering where it was, that was not a back shoulder throw. You don't miss inside on a back shoulder throw. You put that on the sideline if that's what you're doing. And they weren't close to the sideline. It was a really bad throw, and it was a bad decision. I'm not even sure where he should have been going with that ball. I hate to do this, but at the same time, it's impossible to see the flaws of Pickett and then look at Brock Purdy on the other side, who operated brilliantly, did exactly what he was supposed to do, didn't miss, threw a couple great passes, didn't make mistakes. That's why they won. Find me a game in which one quarterback noticeably outplays the other and loses. I mean, it just doesn't happen in the NFL. Pittsburgh, at its base level, against a team as good as San Francisco is, they're not going to win with a performance like they had from their quarterback. I don't want to say that was everything, but you do have to evaluate the dozen or so other plays that they ran in that game under the mindset that their quarterback couldn't throw anything, and he had to throw a lot. They were down a lot early. They barely ever ran the ball. Najee Harris had one run and a bunch of nothing else. Jaylen Warren barely saw the field. They didn't have a chance to run or possess the ball because they couldn't complete passes. They couldn't move the sticks. I don't want to say that because it's exactly what we've said over the last 2 years. That's the problem. It's like at some point here, something needs to shift. That's 3 different quarterbacks starting in week 1 over 3 years, and none of the 3 of them have looked like they're remotely prepared to go out on the field and play the team that they're playing against. And granted, all 3 of those games are against very good teams. They managed to win 2 of the 3 somehow. Luck finally ran out, and they lost this year. But it's their quarterback play has to improve a lot. And I understand what Mike Tomlin is saying when he says this is on all of us. It was everybody. I don't disagree with that, but the most noticeable change they're going to make and what's going to benefit everybody else is a quarterback who is delivering accurate passes consistently. And they did not get that on Sunday.
They have Cleveland coming up on Monday night, so America gets to see this mess for themselves. Cleveland obviously is a terrific defense. It doesn't take much to say that. So from the Steelers' point of view, how important is it going to be to keep the score down to give their offense a chance?
It's the age-old question. What comes first, the offense dominating or the defense does one set up the other? the way Pittsburgh is, and we have, 3 seasons or two seasons in a game of history of this now, that they're not going to score a whole lot of points. They're not going to move the ball very far. That's just the reality that we're in. Because of that, it naturally, the assumption is the defense is going to have to hold a team to 20 points or less to have a chance. And I think that's where they are. Cleveland, though, is one of the teams they've moved the ball on a little bit. I think, and don't quote me on this, I know that there was one game they had 399 yards. So since we're not counting that, close only matters in horseshoes and hand grenades, I think that was against Cleveland. That's a team they've had success with. They've been able to move the ball a bit. They have, because of that, they might have a little bit of added confidence going into the game. But like I said, watch Cleveland play. Jim Schwartz has come to that team and completely overhauled what they're doing and how they're doing it, and they look tough. It's not going to be the same Browns that we've seen the last couple of years. They're tough against the run, and they can get after the quarterback. So it's in many ways real difficult to think the offense is going to have a whole lot of success, if any at all, because this is a team that if we go down the chain of logic with them, they don't succeed enough on first down. That puts them behind the 8 ball on second down. They lose both of those, third and long. Jim Schwartz lives for third and long, and this is the perfect team for his defense. They're going to tee off on him, on everybody that Pittsburgh is going to put out there. So I think in that regard, their defense is going to have to stand on its head for 4 quarters, maybe longer than that, if they have any chance at all. And you have to figure out a way to get a really bad game out of Cleveland's offense, which we've seen is certainly possible. But it's been a talented team the last couple of years. We've known that. They have the ability, if this is them putting it together or if it's just a fluke 1 week, we'll find out Monday.
Always the best half hour of the week, my friend. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.